Hello, welcome back to Everard Junction. Today going to carry on building up the scenery over where the car auction is. Thanks for all the comments and feedback in the previous scenery video to this one. A lot of people getting very excited about some scenery going on the layout. So today I'm going to continue to build on the scenery that got started in that video. As I said at the end of it, it was only the bare bones, basic scenery, lots more finer detail to come. So I've been making a few changes and refinements and generally progressing with the area. Something you can see is I've turned the fence around. That was pointed out by a few people, and rightly so. It was pointing the wrong way. It wasn't very difficult to turn it around. That's one of the benefits of using the foam to support your scenery. Things like trees and things can be plucked out quite easily, and in this case fence posts can be plucked out quite easily and rotated. The research I did on the fence proved inconclusive. Some pictures showed it facing one way, other pictures showed it facing the other way, but as there's no context in the pictures for who owns the various bits of land, it was difficult to tell which way it should face. But after poking around on Street View for a little bit, I did eventually find the information I needed. You can see there is a correct style of fence pointing inwards, and you can see the pavement running along there as well. So that's quite similar to what I'm doing here, so I've turned the fence around to be more prototypical. Another small change is just to some of the scenery on the embankment itself. I felt that I overdid it slightly with the greenery over towards the edge of the road, so you can see I've gone back over that, thinned things right out and got a little bit more of the actual base layer of soil showing through. You can see there's a little pothole that's appeared there as well, so we'll get that touched in later on. I've also started laying some foam in the small void between the branch line and the main lines. That's running its way down there. Just started that, and I hope I can get some of that completed by the end of this video. Had a couple of comments regarding the cars going into the car auction. When the time comes, I'll do a separate video on that, as there's quite a lot of work to be done on the cars that are going in there. The cars in the last video were just for display, they weren't a representation of what's actually going in the car auction itself. So the cars will feature in a video of their own, but for now I'm just going to crack on with the scenery. If you're watching this and you work for Oxford Diecast, then here's my request for you.
With more interior space than any other car in its class. The highly advanced Austin Maestro from 4,750 pounds. Driving is believing.
Okay, so to kick things off, we're going to get started with this scale model scenery lineside fence kit. This is the Great Western variety, which looks a little bit different to the fences that were elsewhere during the 20th century, but that's going to be appropriate for the region of this layout. I think that was probably even harder than the security fence. Threading all those tiny pieces of wire through the posts was extremely time consuming, and at one point I thought my eyes were going to explode from looking so hard. But it does look the business. Really pleased with how that's come out. You can see it's not straight by any means. It's got that aged look to it. That fence has clearly been there for a good number of years. So I painted the posts before taking them off of the sprue, and you can see that the actual wire is still finished in a bright zinc sort of colour, so that certainly needs some weathering and some painting, which I will do later. Overall, things are coming along, happy with how things are looking. We've got the change in elevation on the branch line, we've got the main lines in the background, we've got the rooftops of distant buildings behind that, and the sky. So very pleased with that. It's all sort of going according to plan at the moment. Up here at track level we have a junction and 4 sets of points. There's also a bridge, and there will eventually be signalling. Quite a lot to keep in good condition, quite a lot of maintenance to do. British Rail are going to need easy access to the track. They'll usually arrive at the worksite in a vehicle, just like Network Rail do today. So when they turn up, they are going to need a way of getting onto the track, and that is usually achieved with a flight of stairs up the embankment. So I'm going to put a little gate in here, something that's been added afterwards and bodged onto the existing fence, and then I think in conjunction with the steps that'll look quite good. And then there is a way for British Rail to get up to track level, do their work, and then move off to the next job. The steps are just made out of some off-cut pieces of card. They're not quite long enough yet, so I'll continue building those. And similar to the fence, I'm deliberately making sure that they're not perfect. They need to look somewhat homemade and weather-beaten, especially for that sort of thing during this era. Today, with the advent of health and safety and Network Rail, there's concrete and railings and stuff all over the place. That just wasn't the case 30 years ago. The foam has now dried in this area, so I will now carve that into the relevant shape and then apply some sculpt mould and continue building up some of the scenery. Okay, that's the sculptor mold down. As I said in the previous scenery video, this stuff does take a very long time to dry, so I won't come back to this area for at least a couple of days. Okay, I've progressed a little bit more with the canal scene. You can see the base of the canal scene is now covered in sculpt mold to give it that rough textured finish. I think it looks quite good. And then obviously they've got the canal piling down both sides as well. I've given it a coat of brown, and now it just needs a little bit more added to it. It's a bit too brown, need a little bit of some darker colours in there to try and replicate the sort of steel sort of colour that the canal piling is made of, although after only a few years it does get extremely grimy and disgusting, so it's not far off really in terms of colour. Certainly the ground at the bottom is the right colour, but I'd like to lighten up the piling a little bit, make it look a little bit better than it does now. Okay, I've just toned it down with some grey, put a bit of brown in there as well, so now needs some extra effects over the top of that. Okay, that's starting to look about right now. I've got a nice sort of deep matte brown, not quite as red as the initial brown, and that's the sort of effect I was going for, that sort of canal, sort of dirty, murky sort of look. There's a couple of bits I can touch up, but for the most part it's looking pretty good. Right, next thing to do is to start installing the steps for the workers to get to the trackside. Okay, to install the steps, I'm going to do exactly what they would do in real life, and that is cut out the terrain and install the steps. While glue and sculpt mould is drying elsewhere, I'm going to focus a little bit on the canal for a bit. You can see I've already sculpted out where the towpath is going to be, a small embankment and the gardens for the terraced houses. So to tie this all together, I'm going to go over it with some sculpt mould. I'm going to pay particular attention to it as it dries to get the towpath area nice and smooth. I'm going for a sort of dirt towpath on that side, but it will be quite well trodden, so it needs to be nice and smooth. I've also marked out the gardens for the terraced houses and protected the retaining wall with some tape so that the sculpt mould only goes where I want it to, and then when I put the terraced houses back down on the flat area over here, the slightly raised bit of sculpt mould should make the house look really bedded into its foundations rather than just plonked on the top of something flat. Okay, the sculpt mould is in. Just at the end there I've decided to try out something a little bit different. I've just used a steel rule to rub into the wet sculpt mould the groove for where the fences are going to go. Should mean that the fences are a little bit easier to put up, as I know that where they're going is now flat. With the sculpt mould there could be some lumps and bumps which would make putting the fences in a little bit difficult. Looking forward to putting the fence in. Got an excellent fence for a residential garden. Here on the towpath I've smoothed it out quite heavily. It's still got plenty of ruts and potholes, but it is reasonably smooth. It is the sort of finish that you would see on a dirt track in a country park or something like that. This being the towpath for the canal, thought it was only fitting that it was a sort of mud path rather than something that was paved. I've stopped the gardens at the top of the embankment, decided to make the embankment part of British Waterways property, just because it's quite steep. It's not the sort of thing I would particularly want at the end of my garden. Not much you could do with it, and it should look a little bit more interesting looking down the canal itself, having the embankment as part of that scene rather than it being separated by a fence lower down. Starting to continue with the scenery over in this corner as well. A little bit more sculpt mould just to blend things in a bit better with the canal. I've got a temporary piece of wood which will be covered by plastic card eventually to form the the retaining wall for the embankment, and then the various bits of plasticard necessary to build up the bridge supports will go in too. Under the bridge I've got a brick wall right up against the edge of the canal, which you often see on one side, and then I've let the towpath continue through on this side. You can see things are taking shape already, certainly much bigger than the old canal scene, and I think more impressive. Lots to do, but I can already see how good it's going to look with the trains running over the top of that. Okay, whilst that next bit dries, we're going to go and move on to some track infrastructure. You can't go anywhere on the network without running into the infrastructure running along the side of the line, keeping everything going in the background. Almost every line in Britain now will have cable trunking running along one side of it for its entire length to carry the various signalling and telecommunication wires. Going back to the 1950s and earlier, you would have had point rodding and the wires controlling the signals running from the various signal boxes positioned along the line. As time moved on and you got into the 1960s, things like colour light signals came into effect, and you ended up with a mix of point rodding, signal communication wires, and these traditional cables that operated the old style semaphore signals. And then as you move into the 70s, the 80s and the 21st century, the amount of track infrastructure only increases as the signalling systems become ever more complex and the systems to ensure safety on the line become ever more complex, necessitating a need for more and more wires, relay boxes and infrastructure running along the side of the railway. As I'm modelling the late 1980s, I'm going to need a reasonable bit of cable trunking, relay boxes and the like to make the railway look as prototypical as possible. It's not going to be the right mess that it is today with seemingly cable trunking going absolutely everywhere. It's going to be a little bit more sparse than that given the era I'm modelling, but it's important not to overlook it. The branch line needs cable trunking, the main lines need at least one trough of cable trunking, and there needs to be relay boxes, orange tubing running under the tracks, and all the other various bits of detail to make this look as realistic as possible. So the plan at the moment for this area of the layout is to have some cable trunking running along the side of the branch line here, working its way up to the bridge over there where it meets the rest of the main lines, and somewhere on the main lines there will also be cable trunking. I've not decided exactly where it's going to go yet. It could go here, it could go in the middle, or it could go on the far side, but either way there's going to be a junction of infrastructure about there where the infrastructure for this line is going to meet the rest of the railway. So I've got a nice little space there where I can have a load of relay boxes and bits and pieces to make that look all convincing. This is another little kit by Scale Model Scenery, all part of that big bundle of stuff I bought the other week, and very nice it is too. Laser cut again. It's even got a representation of the safety tread on the floor. It comes with a small flight of steps to get down to ground level, so it's going to go somewhere around here. And I will sink it into the ground. I want this little platform, if you like, to be quite close to the ground. It's purely there just to counter the unevenness of the terrain here. Okay, well there we have it. I've painted it a light grey colour to reflect its newness, and I've also put a touch of silver in with the mix of grey just to give it a slightly more metallic finish, as the real thing is made out of metal. I can have some extra effects dry brushed onto it at a later date. For now, that's good enough. Next item on the list is cable trunking. This is a card kit. No prizes for guessing who makes this, and I have been slowly assembling it. Basically it comes in lengths of about 300mm. I've glued 3 sections together here. The lids are yet to come. That's just the base cable trunking. Being card, it's nice and flexible, so I can get a bit creative and make it look nice and realistic. Too many times I've seen layouts with the cable trunking perfectly straight and only making turns at 90-degree sections. So I can have this running along the side of the line, but I can also make sure that it isn't perfectly straight and it does go around curves and over bumps and things like that. Okay, the ballast and cable trunking is now drying off. You can see I've put a little bit of earth along the side of the cable trunking. I didn't want a perfectly clean join between the earth and the ballast, so that's come out quite nicely. Maybe a little bit more to add there. You can see the workers have hired a couple of transit vans just to weigh things down while it all dries. You can see it's not flat, there's lumps and bumps, it's not perfectly straight, just like the real thing. I haven't completely buried it either. I wanted some of the detail in the side to be visible. Okay, so now I'm going to have a look at some of the next bits and pieces to do, and that concerns the drainage. You can see I've just got some pins here holding the cable trunking in position whilst everything dries. Drainage on the railway line, especially on embankments and various places, cuttings, anywhere where water is likely to run off or build up. The drainage is catered by means of pipes located underneath the track work, usually between the tracks, so they can be got at if they need any maintenance. So they're mostly invisible to the naked eye, but there are certain clues that can be incorporated on a model railway like this to show that there is a representation of drainage. So what I've got is some of these catch pits. These are seen all over the railway network in various locations, usually in groups of like 2, 3, 4, you know, sometimes like 20, depends where you are. But they're a great little thing that can be just placed somewhere like that, for example, to show that there is a underground pipe running along there dealing with drainage. It's worth also pointing out that this is the older bar style of a catch pit. The more modern ones are typically blue and are sort of an egg crate type of appearance. They're quite a bit different. So you need to take into account the era you're modelling. So I've gone for the older ones. I've got quite a few, and I think somewhere along here they will look quite good. Something like that is what I'm thinking of at the moment. There's no hard and fast rule with the placement of these. Sometimes you can have two right next to each other, sometimes there's one there, one in the middle and one on the other side. Depends where the pipe's going. Down here I shall let the road deal with the drainage. Done a fair bit of research, and this embankment's not huge, let's be honest, it's quite shallow. Most places on Google Earth and Google Street View that I've been able to find, that I've then looked around, the roads quite often just have drains in them to deal with any runoff from the embankment. Drainage up here, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. It depends on the geography of what's going on. So I'm just going to put some drains in the street, and we'll have some catch pits up there. Arguably the drains down here are also catch pits, but have some up there, some down here, and I think that should do the trick. Plenty of drains to choose from, pretty much any type you can think of. There's some more modern ones down the bottom, some of those ones. So I'll just keep it simple, keep it traditional. Something like this I think should do the trick. Use a couple of those. So there we go. Put some drains in. Quite a few drains, to be honest. The council have done an excellent job on this road. Little bit of weathering to do, a couple of little things. You can just about pick them out as they go down the street. We also have the opportunity now for an outflow pipe into the canal. So that's something I'll look to add in future. That'd be quite a nice little bit of detail to add into the canal. Maybe even try and replicate a dribble of water coming out of it or something like that. We'll have a look and see as well if I can bed them into the road a little better than that. As they are on reasonably thick card, they sit proud ever so slightly, but I'm sure a tiny little bit of filler around the edge and some suitably coloured paint would make them look a little bit more like they're actually part of the street. And then the catch pits for the railway I've glued in. They're just drying now. So now we've got some track infrastructure, a bit of drainage, a bit of cable trunking. Things are starting to look quite good. So I'm going to now start looking at doing some of the grass in that bit of waste ground between the tracks. As this area is between two tracks, the grass is going to struggle to grow. You know, the wind, the dirt from the passing trains, it's not an ideal environment. So I will make the grass a little bit thinner and a little bit more patchy on this area. I think it should be a nice contrasting effect to what we've got going on down here. Certainly don't want that exact finish replicated again up here. Something a little bit thinner I think would look a little bit better. I'll just mention as well, I have not painted the cable trunking. You may have noticed beforehand. I actually think it's a pretty close colour straight out of the box, and once I weather the track, any overspray will go onto it and enhance the effect. The colour of cable trunking typically represents the general condition of the ballast and the track anyway, so I will do any weathering effects to that after everything is finished. So there we go, the grass is in. I've added some more of the straw coloured grass in this area. The soil quality is going to be quite poor. The passing of trains are going to stress things out, hence why I've made it more patchy, and we've got some spots in there of some sort of dead grass. Just adds to the overall effect. There's a lot of excess on there at the moment, obviously. That'll all get cleaned off once it's dried, and then I'll go over and add the much shorter grass in a couple of bits, and I think that'll do it for that area. Again, less is more. Don't want to fill that with bushes and trees and all sorts of stuff. It looks fine just the way it is. I'll also put the lids on the cable trunking, and that will finish that off quite nicely, I think. Then we can move on to the next bit. I'm trying to work in relatively small sections. You can see the catch pits just there. Nice little bit of detail. I'm glad I've gone to the trouble to do that. And you can see that they're losing the battle with nature. They're getting a bit overgrown. That will add to the debris that collects inside them. It means British Rail are going to have to come along and clean these out relatively frequently. Just vacuumed off the loose grass, and I've applied just a couple of spots of the shorter grass. You can see how this area is a little bit more barren, which is the sort of effect I was going for. Blends quite nicely with the next bit. So before I vacuum off the excess grass, I'm just finishing off the cable trunking. And something that's really nice about this cable trunking is it actually comes with the cable detail to put inside. Just comes on slips of paper in the kit, and you just cut them out and glue them in. So having put those in, what I can do now is when I put the lids on, I can have some of the lids missing, some of them removed and some of them not fitted properly, and then you'll be able to see the detail of the cabling inside. So there we go, the lids are now installed, and in a couple of places I've missed a few off and left a few lying to the side. It's only a short section so far, but very pleased with how it's gone together. Excellent little kit. The whole layout done up in that stuff's going to really look the business. While I've been waiting for stuff to dry, I've just airbrushed the wires on the fence, sort of bit of a sort of rusty brown sort of colour. They're now much more difficult to see. They don't have that shiny appearance. I think it looks a lot better. I'll add a few bits of greenery back along the base around the posts and stuff, just where it was inevitable to get paint on a couple of little bits. So a few more shrubs and things to add down there. So now I'm going to carry on with the canal sort of area and the area behind those terrace houses. I have airbrushed a little bit of a darker brown along the path where it's going to have been walked on, and that's just to remind me where I don't want to put any greenery or dirt texture. I just want to leave that as it is. Okay, I've just marked out where some of the lawns are going to be. These are going to be the lawns that are well kept and mown, and I've left, as you can see, a little bit of space here and there for flower beds and things like that. Next, I'm going to do a really overgrown, messy garden, the type you look at that makes you think, does that person actually know they have a garden? Okay, well that's the basics of the gardens completed. They're still drying at the moment, which is why some of the bushes look a little white. There'll be some more details to add. I'll try and get some flowers sorted out for these gardens. At the moment we've just got some basic shrubs and things in a few places, and some woodland scenics fine leaf foliage to replicate some small trees. Fence posts need a small lick of paint too. See, there's a little mark there where they've been cut off with the sprue. I'm very happy with the fence. It's a very nice little kit. It's quite fiddly to put together, but they're actually proper fence panels, just like you would have in residential gardens. I've always struggled to find a suitable fence for doing gardens, but Scale Model Scenery have once again come up with the goods. I wish this sort of stuff was available when I did the first layout. The panels are printed onto some quite sturdy paper, and the detail is only printed on one side. So on places where the fence will be visible from both sides, you simply glue two panels back to back so that you've got the detail visible on both sides. On these panels that run down the length of the gardens, I haven't bothered to put any panels on the other side, as you're not going to see beyond the fence. I've also got a little alleyway just at the end to get back to the street. The pathway needs a little bit of airbrushing with the darker brown, so it looks a bit like this one. But another nice little piece of detail. You can see how close the house is to the railway line. A couple of people have expressed comments and maybe even concern at that, but unfortunately in a lot of built up areas in Britain this is the reality for some people. They do literally live this close to the railway line.
How often does a train go by?
So often you won't even notice it.
Sorted out this little corner over here. Obviously it needs weathering, it looks far too fresh. Just put a basic retaining wall in there and a bit of concrete to hold up the bridge. Got some dirt texture down in the base, and I will add shrubs and various bits of detail to that soon. I've also bedded in the steps, just a couple of places where I'd cut perhaps a little too far in the terrain. But that's got a nice effect now, because you can see how the grass is sort of really springing up in places up the sides of those steps. Here's the new building for the car auction. It's scratch built, and it's just been something I've been working on over various evenings over the last couple of weeks. It's not quite finished yet, but most of the hard work has been done. It's about the same size as the previous garage that was on here. That was a Bachmann Scenecraft item, although I have knocked the height down slightly so that it's easier to see over the top of it and look at the trains in the background. It's based very loosely on a real car auction that I found whilst looking around on Google Street View. The vehicles go into that doorway there. Once inside, they're then auctioned, and then they emerge from either this middle door or the one furthest away. Most of the buyers stand here, and the auctioneer is in the far corner at the back. It's quite a small building, but it's going to be quite a small company operating this car auction. It's only a little private entity, nothing major, no national companies here, just some little backstreet car auction place. It's got a plain wall on this side. I'll put a sign along there somewhere advertising the company. Inside you can see the construction. It's just made out of a few scrap pieces of laser cut MDF. Those are actually from the sprues left over from the Canal piling kit. Some bits of plywood to form the sides of the building, and then laminate both sides in plasticard. I'll be doing quite a lot more scratch building on this layout, so this is only the very beginning. We'll cover scratch building in greater detail in a future video. Okay, well that seems like a logical place to stop. This area is still not finished, there's still a lot to do, and I will pick that up in the next scenery video. If you're after some more content, there's some links in the description as usual for some more stuff worth checking out, and I've also left a link in there for scale model scenery, as I used quite a few of their little kits in this video, and I know some of you will be wanting to know where I got things like the fences and the catch pits and the various other details from, so feel free to check that out as well. And as usual, there's a link on the screen for Dave over at Dean Park Station. His layout is much further ahead than mine, and it's set during the best era of British Rail, the 1980s. So feel free to check his videos out. There's a lot of stuff going on over there. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you with the next one.